Welcome to today's episode of the Insurance, Life, and Everything in Between podcast. My name is Adam Brsan.
And I'm Chris Smith.
If you've yet to do so, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another episode. And if you love this podcast, don't forget to share it with a friend or colleague. We greatly appreciate your help and support.
What if I told you that free leads don't work for face-to-face sales? Today, over the course of the next 25 minutes, Nick and I are going to discuss a topic that we probably agree on, although we don't agree with everything, which makes the content worth listening to. But I think we're going to have a good conversation about why free leads don't work for face-to-face sales. And we won't discuss it, but I will say, I think free leads for telesales probably makes perfect sense with the right parameters. Nick, today's topic on Valentine's Day, the third video of the day, free leads don't work for face-to-face sales. How's it sound?
I think it sounds like a hot topic. I don't know. It's weird to me that anybody would disagree with this, honestly. I think you're probably right about the telesales thing. I think if it's set up correctly with the right people and the right parameters, I think telesales maybe even makes more sense on a free lead program, maybe. Just because it's so difficult for the independent agent to get over the capital investment needed to be able to get into the non-free lead space on telesales and actually producing the volume that you need to on the final expense side or on the Medicare side, either one, because you need to produce in volume. And that's really the thing, right? And this is why free leads are the most expensive leads you'll ever get if you're working face-to-face. It's breathtakingly expensive leads. They sound good because you're like, oh, hey, I got nothing but time. I'm gonna just go out and grind it out and make a bunch of sales, and I don't have to put up any money up front. But here's the thing. Leads are cheap. Really, really good, high quality, really fantastic, sounds expensive leads are cheap. If you are spending $1,000 a week on leads, you are getting by with really, really, really low overhead. And you should be walking away with $5,000 from that $1,000 lead spend every single week at a minimum if you're bad at this job in final expense. If you're bad at it.
I was debating a topic before we got on this afternoon. And one of the ones I was going to ask you about, which kind of parlays perfectly into what you just said, is could you really go a whole week working and not write business? And I absolutely empirically think that's impossible, but that's part of the problem. Like, sure, a free lead program works if the people work. Right. Sure, a free lead purchasing your leads is a profitable venture, probably up to $60, $70, $80 a lead if the person works. But the problem in this industry is most people don't work.
And listen, you deal with agents in volume a lot more than I do. And the agents that I deal with all have a lead system and have a history of being successful before they're working with me. So my perspective on whether or not people work is maybe a little skewed. But if you go out and you have, let's say 20 leads. Let's just say you're only getting 20 leads a week. Direct mail leads, expensive direct mail leads, exclusive expensive direct mail leads. They're costing you $45 per lead, and you get 20 of them every single week, right? $45 a lead is, I think, on the expensive side for a direct mail lead. Am I wrong about that? Am I like living in a fantasy world?
You get in North Carolina and you just nobody even bothers anymore. You're going digital, you're not doing it. You get into places like Georgia, even Facebook leads are a challenge. Arizona.
Okay.
There are places that are just bad marketing states, but okay, let's say retail cost $40.
Okay. So $40 a lead, right? So $40 a lead and you're spending $800 a week. 20 leads in your hand every single week, right? If you are telling me that out of 20 brand new leads that just came in that week from somebody who signed the paper and they got mailed to you, and so within the last 3 weeks, they've filled something out, you cannot track down and talk to 12 of those 20 people, you're lying. Like, everybody can do that.
Yeah.
Everybody can track down 12 out of 20 people in their new leads. And if you are telling me that you cannot close 5 of those 12 people, less than 50%, you can't close 5 of those 12 people, you need to find a new line of work. Like, this is just not the job for you. If you can't make 5 sales out of 12 presentations off of 20 leads, like, I don't know what to tell you. This is not the job for you. But like, if you're making, call it $700 a sale, right? Like, maybe you're on a 100% contract and you're selling a $700 AP plan, right? So not a very high monthly premium. On average, I think that's a reasonable assumption. So if you sell 5 of those, you've made back your lead cost and then some by the time you've written your second policy. You're profitable if you just sell 2. Right?
Yeah, and at the risk of putting my foot directly in my mouth by somebody in my distribution who watches the video and gets their feelings hurt, that's not the intention here. This is actually a motivational moment, because I don't think let's take it even further. Not even a new agent. Let's say you've been in the business 90 days, so you have your own personal inventory, right? You've got more than simply 20 pieces of paper with names on it. You've got last week's, the week before that, the week before that, a consistent flow of this week's, last week's, and such. If you went out there 5 days and you knocked 25 doors a day, and you didn't even make appointments, you just 2015'd it, you just banged doors, ground and pound. You need to make money and you have bills to pay. I don't see how you couldn't present to one person out of 25 door knocks a day, and by pure volume and presence of mortality, enough people are going to say yes to what you have to sell to push you into the next week.
Yeah.
When I got into the business, I did not have a ton of sales suave or even social skills. Like, I showed up and took you to the hospital, and if you were alive when you got there, and that was a success. That was a great sales call. There was no warm up and rapport when you call 911. So I just simply brute force efforted 5 days a week and wrote 3,000, then 4,000, then 5,000. I don't understand it. But like, if today's topic is free leads don't work for face-to-face sales, here's what needs to exist in an IMO for it to even become possible. And tell me what you think. First, there needs to be a significant spread. We're talking 50, 55, 60, 65, 70 point spread. There needs to be infrastructure in place to distribute, receive, purchase, reorganize, reissue the leads. There needs to be significant capital in place so that when it's not working, you can eat the loss and keep going. There's probably needs to be staff in place, financial accounting, shout out to Post Rock Financial, and volume. Like, it's just, think about it like this. The first time you try to recruit an agent and final expense, you're not going to make anything. Sorry. Nothing. The second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, maybe around the 12th successful full-time producer, do you finally get to see any kind of revenue. So in free leads, 1 or 2 producers doesn't work. You need the volume of 10, 12, and 20 to balance out all the differentials in it. Maybe free leads don't work unless you have 20 free lead agents doing it.
Right. Well, it's got to work in volume for everybody, right? Because the overhead for the agency is extremely high. But like, here's why it doesn't work for the agent, right? Like, street level is, let's call it 100%, just like make math easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Average premium is actually higher than $58 a month, but let's say it's $58 a month because that's $700. That puts you at $3,500 of income that you are generating to yourself a week, right? And you're spending $800 a week, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're bringing home, after expenses, let's say you spend $100 a week on gas, $200 a week on gas. You're really driving. $2,500 a week. right? $2,500 a week is a good living by almost anybody's standard, right?
Yeah.
If you're on a free lead program, like you said, there's got to be the spread there. So you're on a 50% contract, you're on a 40% contract, 60% contract. Like, I don't know. Most people who are on free lead programs who are working face to face, I think, are on like 50% contracts. But I don't know. You might know better than I do. Would you say that that's fair?
It takes that when you're talking about the spread necessary to maintain it, because dollar for dollar, you can do it higher, but people aren't going to consistently average the number necessary. That's the problem. I think the problem comes back to, I wrote it down here, it's skin in the game. Like the do forward model, I believe, is recruiting employee-minded people, similar to what North Star did. North Star would take somebody out of a Rite Aid or a Walgreens who has a job but wants freedom and flexibility,
right,
but of a similar income caliber, put them on the phone and pump them full of leads, run it through the machine, and they make money and they make money. It isn't the same kind of person targeted towards face-to-face go out
right,
and see people in the country or the hood.
right. I mean,
for that level of intentionality in your business and effort and requirements and responsibility, I think it probably needs a lot of skin in the game somewhere.
so I mean, like, if you're even on a 60% contract and getting free leads, which is, I think, the best that I've ever heard of anybody getting, you're still, instead of bringing home $2,700, $2,500 after you count gas, right? You're only bringing in $2,000. If you're on the 50% contract, you're only bringing in $1,750, right? For the same scenario, where all you did was, close 5 out of 20 leads after having given 12 presentations. So your closing ratio is less than 50%. Why would anybody choose to do that? Why would anybody choose to do that? Why would anybody say, hey, I've got more time than money, so I'm going to go out and make less money? Why would anybody do that? And so it's bad for the agents. And eventually the agents figure out that it's bad for the agents. And so they're not going to stay there, because people are not stupid, and they will eventually be like, man, I'm writing $4,000 or $5,000 a week. I'm not just doing $3,500 a week in premium. I'm not doing like baby learner numbers. I'm doing like real big numbers. I'm doing $8,000-9,000 a week in premium. And here's the thing with free leads: the more you write, the more you get screwed. The more expensive your free leads become, the more premium you write.
Yeah,
because it's a percentage. You lose more money as you scale.
it's
right.
Tough.
You have to be failing out for it to make sense. You have to, the break even point is you have to be doing like $1,700 a week in premium. And how is that good for your upline? Right? How is that good for the person who is providing you with the free leads? They're losing money on that. They're going to kick you off the free lead program. It makes no sense for anybody involved at any level. I don't understand it.
When you get it to scale, and I've seen the financials on it, I can see it on my own financial report, when it's functioning the way it's supposed to, a free lead agent is your most profitable franchise out of all your franchise locations. If you look at a spreadsheet of your agents as in different restaurants in your chain, they are your most profitable restaurants when things are working the way they're supposed to. But the human element is that uncontrollable variable that
right.
the whole thing up.
Right. When things work the way that they're supposed to, they're your most profitable agent.
It's like, it's like the appointment setting program. When things are working the way they're supposed to, it's a very awesome thing. When Christmas break comes and everybody takes off, you're eating the entire payroll that week because you still have to pay those employees to be on staff.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah. It is not a model that makes sense. For telesales, maybe, because the volume can be much higher, right? Then you're not talking about like 5 sales a week. Then you're talking about potentially like, 15 sales a week, right? You're talking not 20 leads a week. You're talking 20 leads a day.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. I get that.
The volume necessary is so much higher.
I get that question from Toolkit all the time. I want to place a lead order. Is the minimum 20? I'm like, the minimum Yeah, I mean, the system doesn't let you order less than 20, but no, like
Right. It
25,
won't.
30, 40. What are you
Yeah.
selling? Is this over the phone? 80. People
Like
just,
I was talking to a guy on Reddit, and he was like, "Hey, I'm wondering if I can do better on my leads. I'm making my own leads. They're costing me $47 a lead, and I'm closing 20%." And I was like, "Are you doing that face to face or over the phone?" And he's like, "Over the phone." Like, don't screw with that, man. $47 a lead, and you're got a 20% close rate over the phone. I would take that all day long, every day.
yeah.
Don't mess with it. You're going to be fine.
Yeah, if it's making you money, leave it alone. But let's walk through a couple concepts I think are interesting over the course of our next 15 or so minutes we got today. Why do Medicare agents, because we're supposed to talk Medicare when we talk together,
Yeah,
why
right.
do Medicare agents, Nick, expect free leads?
Well, because they've because Medicare pays differently than final expense is really the answer.
True.
Medicare pays differently than final expense. Medicare leads are less valuable than a final expense lead. You can make less money per lead. And it is easier to market in other ways. Which is, I mean, I'm going to be honest. I do not recommend most of my agents that I work with. Most of my agents, I don't recommend for most of them to purchase dedicated Medicare leads. I recommend for most of them, and again, I've got a particular business model, but most of them are already buying final expense leads.
Mhm.
I recommend for most of them to market to their final expense book of business, because it's just dramatically more cost effective, because you've already got the prospects in your pipeline. And while Medicare will ultimately pay you more than a final expense policy will, you got to get there. It's not going to pay you more for 6 years, right?
True.
It's going to take 6 years to pass that break even point. And so it does not make a lot of sense to upfront 100% of your costs unless you're going to get off of those costs pretty soon. So the whole thing works a little bit differently because of that. But still, free leads are tricky. Free leads. I experimented with giving my Medicare agents free leads. I had a couple of agents who were, I thought, really good, dedicated agents that I gave a
Yeah.
number of free leads a couple of AEPs ago. And most of those agents just let those leads sit in their inbox while they did other things during AEP. They still sold during AEP. Yeah. They just didn't work the free leads that I gave them. That was
Skin in
frustrating.
the game. It comes back to skin in the game.
Yeah, you got to have some skin in the game. If you're from the agency owner side, the agents have to have skin in the game if they're going to use it. It needs to be valuable to them,
It's
right?
like
And
I talked about value for an hour this morning. The policy has to mean something to the consumer. The leads have to mean something to the agent. The leads definitely mean something to the upline who paid for the leads.
yeah, yeah. I gave one guy like 1,900 leads for free that just sat in his inbox. He never even opened them. Never even opened the email. I was more than a little bit upset. He sold, like he wrote business that AEP, but he mostly wrote business from his final expense book of business. He didn't feel like he was busy enough doing that he didn't feel like he wanted to go out and knock on the door for these free leads.
True,
Yeah.
because it didn't mean anything to him. Let's talk
Right.
next one. When should an agent, both Medicare or final expense, do their own leads, either digital or direct mail?
If you know how. I would not spend a lot of time or a lot of money if you do not have a lot of money to figure out how. I would say anybody who's watching this should value their time at roughly one policy an hour. So if your average policy is $500, $500 an hour. If your average policy is $1,000, $1,000 an hour. That is what you could be making if you were out sitting and talking to a prospect instead of learning how to do Facebook ads.
Very
That's
true.
about how you should value your time. If it's going to take you at $1,000 an hour, 20 hours to learn how to generate your own Facebook ads, you are costing yourself $20,000. And be aware that that's what you're paying. Time is not free. There is not an infinite amount of it.
No.
Time
No.
keeps marching on regardless. You only have so much.
Literally one life to live. Like, it's like
Yeah.
if you're not writing enough money to make sense in this business, it's okay to go find something else to do. No, I mean, if you did it correctly, mind you, but if you weren't doing it correctly, that's a you problem, and you need to take responsibility for that.
Yeah.
You wanted to throw this one in there for today's conversation. Why are many organizations, whatever word they use to identify themselves as, lowering advertised commission levels?
So without getting myself in trouble, I think that it has actually gotten too easy to write final expense applications these days. Things like iCover, things like DocuSign, click to sign stuff, some telesales agents. It is too easy for somebody who can look at this industry and say, holy cow, I can write business today and have a deposit in my bank account tomorrow for $1,500 for every application that I write, if I write a big enough application. And they're not going to validate whether or not the bank account works before they pay me. And they're not going to pursue criminal charges against me if I submit a bunch of applications with bank accounts that are invalid. And so they're not going to come after me, and nobody's actually going to get charged for these. So, victimless crime, right? I'm taking one over on the insurance companies. And so I'm going to go make like $60,000 in like 5 days and then skip town.
Yeah. You better
and that sounds kind of like, oh, Nick, that's a kind of a crazy catastrophe doomsday scenario that you just described, except I can literally name 4 people off the top of my head who have had that happen to them pretty much exactly like that. Yeah. And so people are lowering initial compensation rates. It is bad for everybody, hurts everybody.
I think the fact is that when people, and I was talking to an agent today because he wants his lead carrier to be someone that pays on issue, not on draft. I get that. Get that. It makes perfect sense. And I would teach that. Like, your primary carrier should probably pay you quick so you can keep your cash flow going. There's not many of them. There's really not that many of them left. No. A Transamerica will do it on a case-by-case basis with the right relationship with them. Hey, Steve Weber, shout out to you guys if you're watching. American Amicable will do it on, I believe, on a regular basis, depending on the IMO. I mean, it's really IMO dependent, so I can't go down the list. But a broad spectrum, most of them won't. Don't do it because of bad actors and the risk involved, really.
Yeah. And it is, like, listen, nobody likes doing PHIs. Everybody's like, it's 2025. I'm not doing a PHI anymore. I get it. But a PHI is, it is much harder to fake 40 applications when you have to do a PHI on everyone. Nobody wants to have to get physical signatures because it's a pain in the ass to make people sign on the screen. You can't do it over the phone. Email signature sucks. Security question signature isn't really all that secure.
God, that was true. I'm sorry, whoever called that was a good one, but you knew that was gonna work. Come on,
right? Like, so
work.
Right. So it is just too easy to submit applications that are fraudulent. And listen, I would never do that. I'm actually making a career out of this. I have quite a lot of skin in the game at this point. It is not worth it to me to go make $50,000 or $60,000 real fast. But there are a lot of people who are coming into this with no money and are like, I can make $60,000 by like Friday. Let's do it.
I'm getting to the point, and I think this is actually a normal thing to do. Tell me what you think. My onboarding process is very simple. Like, step 1, contracting. can you complete the contracting as a grown adult expecting to open a small business? If you can't complete the contracting, you don't advance to step 2. Step 2, signing up for things like insurance toolkits so you can functionally operate a quoting tool. Step 3, sign up for a lead program, anywhere between $275 a week to $800, whatever really fits the situation. Complete a meet and greet where we review basic presentation skills, where you show me that you can get on camera and you are a real human. And then go out and sell insurance.
I think that's reasonable. Like, yeah, I think that's really reasonable.
Like, unless I know you already and I've met you or we've talked, like pen pals for 10 years, that's a little bit different situation than you want to pick up. But like, there's so much weird stuff out there. And I even contracted agents before and felt really weird about it. And then they didn't write anything, and thank God they didn't, because it didn't seem right.
Yeah.
But I think we should be protecting ourselves more and be like, can you get on a Google Meets? You can't. Why?
That's not that's. Listen, I talked to an agent the other day who was looking to get on board with me, and we had a Zoom call set up, and he didn't turn his camera on. And so at one point I was like, hey, can you turn your camera on so I can see you? And he was like, oh, my camera doesn't work. And I'm like, well,
word?
Yeah.
I heard that one on Catfish before. Like, what?
Right. Like, I don't know. Like, you've got a cell phone, right? Right? Like, Zoom works on cell phones. So this is just that was a very weird thing for me. And so I think I think you have to be able to do the basics. You have to meet somebody face to face. You have to be able to look them in the eye.
Like you have to be able to demonstrate basic technology proficiency too. Like if somebody is not capable of getting on a Google Meets link, then the process of selling insurance and running a functional franchise is not going to work. It's just not. Like
you don't. Yeah.
So, and I understand, like, some people are technology deficient. Speaking Go High Level to me is still like speaking Chinese, and I'm slowly figuring it out. But entry level stuff, like to be able to open a GPM application and walk yourself through it. If you can't manage Google Meets, you're not going to manage GPM. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Right. So, you have, I mean, everything is becoming electronic applications these days. The companies that even offer paper applications are becoming fewer and farther between. You have to have some basic technological competency. And if you don't, again, then this industry is not for you. And that's okay. It's not for most people.
Yeah. What's new in Medicare?
Not for most people. Most people do not belong in the industry.
No.
That's okay.
That's what, no one hates you for it. Well, let's wrap up on that. What's new in Medicare? What are you thinking?
Oh, just getting ready for April, when SEPs get crazy, because they're real weird this year, and maybe that's the next one we can talk about. All right, so everybody, we'll try this again. We did this last week; it didn't work out so well. But if you're watching this and you've made it to the end, and you would like us to talk about Medicare SEPs next week, I cannot promise you that we will actually remember that we wanted to talk about that. Put something in the comments. Let's put something in the comments saying, hey, we want you to talk about Medicare special election periods, or maybe you want us to talk about something else not related to that. We won't remember that this is what we were talking about. Whatever you put in the comments is probably what we'll talk about. So we'll talk about that next week.
Yeah, second call to action. If you want to work with either one of us, our contact information or our presence is raw across social media. Feel free to reach out. Nick, awesome opportunity to work with folks that are doing final expense that want to add into Medicare. Yep. I run a very similar business model, but slightly different. It's slightly different personalities. But if you're looking for folks to work with, welcome to the non-blackout period of free agency in the Medicare realm. Feel free to reach out to us across socials, and we'd be happy to have that conversation. Subscribe to the video, comment below, hit the like button if you didn't do that. That was mean. Come on, interact with the video if you've watched this far, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.
And this concludes another episode of the Insurance, Life, and Everything in Between podcast. If you like what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, share with a friend or colleague, and if you have any comments or suggestions for future episodes, please leave those too. Any input is greatly appreciated. Thank you.